Thank you very much for this kind words, and it's a great privilege to be here and present the public health surveillance system in Sri Lanka. Because of the time constraints, I'll try to skip some of the slides and try to finish in half an hour's time. So before getting into the public health system in Sri Lanka, I'd like to give you an overview of the health system of the country. So basically, you can divide the health system into public health as well as private sector. So in public health, it's clearly distinct preventive sector as well as curative sector. So in preventive sector, it's going through the medical officer of health units, which I will explain in a minute. And the curative sector is with various level curative health institutes. So what I want to highlight is from the top as well as the grassroots level, we have two distinct curative as well as preventive sectors. So this is a bit about this health system. So in public sector, this government sector, the 95% of the inpatient care is handled by the government hospitals, whereas only 5% of the inpatient care is done by the private sector. And we provide all preventive, curative, and rehabilitative services, mainly Western and small portion of Ayurvedic as well. So when you consider this private health sector, it's 50-50, like OPD services, 50 from the government and 50 from the public health sector. So mainly in urban and peri-urban areas, mainly curative, hardly preventive in private sector, and all types of medicine is practiced. So in preventive health systems, so these are the main central organizations which provide preventive health services. Mainly the epidemiology unit is the core organization for communicable disease control and prevention. Then the Family Health Bureau for MCH activities, maternal and child health. Then Health Education Bureau is for scanning of all these media and social media and doing health education, which relate to all public health aspects. Then we have special campaigns like vertical campaigns, anti-malarial campaign, anti-filariasis, leprosy, STD AIDS, TB, public health veterinary services, then cancer control programs, quarantine services, and many more. The list is few more to go. So this is the disease surveillance structure. It's only for communicable diseases. Other organizations also have similar type of structure. So I'm now concentrating mainly to the EPID part. Centrally, we have this central epidemiology unit at the Ministry of Health, Colombo. And district level, we have regional epidemiologists. We have 26 districts with 26 regional epidemiologists. And at the village level, we have the medical officer of health units. So at the moment, we have 355 medical officer of health units. So this is the basic structure of public health in Sri Lanka. So a little bit more about this MOH system. So Sri Lanka is divided into 355 MOH areas or MOH units. So the population is for 60,000 population, it's one MOH area, but it's of course ranging from 40,000 to 100,000 depending on the terrain. So in each MOH area, we have public health midwives areas, we call PHM areas, as well as PHI stands for Public Health Inspect Area. So again, we can divide whole country into 6,000 odd PHMs and 4,500 odd Public Health Inspector divisions. So this public health unit is headed by a MBBS qualified doctor called MOH, Medical Officer of Health, and he is assisted by at least 2 or 3 additional medical officers. So in this office, the MCH component is basically handled by the public health midwife, and they are being supervised by supervisory public health midwife, stands SPHM, and the total MCH is supervised by public health nursing sister. So the communicable disease part is handled by public health inspector, and they are being supervised by supervisory public health inspector, SPHI. So in addition to these 2 key groups, so we have dental officers, School dental therapist, again comes under the MOH office, and in some places we have dispensaries under the MOH office. So we have registered medical officers, attendant and dispensers, and all the MOH officers, we have a set of clerks, drivers, at least 2 or 3 vehicles. Okay, so this MOH unit system was established in 1926 in our country, in an area called Kalutara. So these are the first health unit, very old photo. And this is the first field clinic set up in that particular place. And now actually this, the first health unit, the health MOH unit, has been developed to a National Institute of Health Science, which is a training center and which is a WHO collaborative center. So this is a current MOH office with their staff. You can see the MOH is seated in the center with sisters and additional MOHs, and just behind them the public health midwives, and on the right hand and left hand side in front with khaki suits. So they're the public health inspectors and the other supportive staff, drivers, clerks. So this is the team dedicated only for preventive activities, identification, control, for 60,000 population on average. So these are the 2 key figures in our public health system, the grassroots workers. So the first person is public health midwife, and the second person is public health inspector. So initial slides I showed you, there are several vertical programs, anti-malaria, anti-TB, various programs at the central level. But remember, at the grassroots level, we have only these 2 officers. All the programs are ultimately going through these 2 officers. And a bit about their selection criteria. They are selected from GCE A-level science stream students. So after that, we are giving us 1.5 years residential training with 6 months field training. And after recruitment, they are giving at least 5 to 6 in-service trainings per year. So they are responsible for MCH care, in the immunization, family planning, well-woman, gender-based violence, and NCD, and their duty list is never ending. It's very long duty list. And their population norm is for 3,000 population, 1 public health midwife. And this is a public health inspector. Again, their entry criteria is GCE A-level science stream students. And again, 1.5 years of training. And then their main duties are communicable disease surveillance, control and prevention, and then early outbreak detection, food and drug authorized officer, and responsible for environmental health. And they have some amount of legal powers as well. Actually, the legal powers comes from the Director General of Health Services. It is delegated to the Medical Officer of Health, and ultimately it's delegated to this particular field officer, public health inspector. For one example, like they can enter to any food handling establishment in their particular area at any point of a time, and by just looking at the food or food item, if he thinks with his knowledge this particular food item is not suitable for human consumption, he can advise to destroy then and there. So nobody can't go against him to the court of law because the power has been vested on him. So these are some of the slides, what are the disease surveillance, just to completeness. So I'm not going to detail these things, but the important thing is a systematic and continuous, and collection, analysis, interpretation, as well as dissemination is very important. So why this type of communicable disease surveillance is necessary? Because simply this is the major public health strategy in prevention and control of diseases. This is almost equivalent to an intelligence unit in an army. So the army might have high-tech equipments or weapons or ammunition, but if they don't get the message on time, the proper time, all these high-tech gadgets will be useless. Similarly, we may be having MRIs, CTs, and whatever the high-tech instruments, but unless you get the correct information on the correct time, so it won't help. So public health surveillance is similar to that. So they can determine the burden of the disease, monitor the trends, and detect and predict outbreaks early, and then identify the high-risk populations, monitor the impact and progress of the preventive strategies, and of course find out what are the poorly performing areas, poorly performing midwives, and the epidemiology of the disease, especially the new diseases like corona we can identify. Then rational health planning and resource allocation. Again, it's very important because we are not a resource-rich country. So we have to plan according to the necessity of the country. Then this sets the platform for basic epidemiological research. So these are the data sources that we use. There's the endomorbidity and mortality registers in the hospital. Then the notification systems, formal, informal, laboratory data, vital statistics, then special disease registers and surveys. So again, these are just for the completeness of this presentation. So I'm not going to detail these things. So in addition to these 5 surveillance methods, there are many more methods, but these are the 5 main methods that we adopt and get the use in Sri Lanka. So at the moment, we have 29 communicable diseases under surveillance. So out of that 29, 16 have special surveillance in addition to the routine surveillance. So out of that 16, 11 are vaccine preventable or VPDs, and 5 are other diseases. So this is the list. So we divide into Group A and Group B, where Group A is where you have to notify then and there internationally. Group B, you have to notify locally. So the surveillance system in Sri Lanka has a legal backing, and it has a Quarantine and Prevention Disease Ordinance in 1897 with many more additions and deletions here thereafter. So it says every medical practitioner is bound to notify. So who are these fellows? They are both government and private medical officers, both inward and outward OPD level officers, all categories, including consultants and the treating clinician should notify. And any person who contravenes these regulations shall be guilty of an offense, and such person shall be prosecuted in court of law. So notify to the medical officer of health of a patient's area of residence. So that is very important. And selected diseases, in addition to informing to the area MOH, they have to immediately inform the epidemiology unit, Central Epidemiology Unit in Colombo. For example, VPD, because we take even a single case of vaccine preventable disease as an outbreak. So notification should be done based on the clinical suspicion and not on confirmatory measures. So you don't have to wait till the confirmation. As soon as when you clock the patient, you know these are the symptoms and this could be a suspected case of this, and you have to inform then and there. So in our system, which we have an inbuilt supervision system. So supervisory grade officers are inbuilt. They are SPHM, SPHI, and the public health nursing sister and MOHs. And for monthly monitoring and evaluation meetings are at the MOH office levels. And we have a set of, I told you we have 26 regional epidemiologists where they also act as a supervisory officers. And at the Central Epid Unit, we have quarterly M&E sessions for regional epidemiologists. So they have to come with their results and present to us, and we will do all these alterations and corrections. And annually, we have EPI and vaccine preventable disease review meetings. In addition to all, we have supervisory surprise visits to all these MOH officers. So these are the prerequisites for effective public health surveillance. Formulation of a standard case definition, it's undoubtedly yes. You should have a standard case definition and set of appropriate methods for data collection, analysis, and interpretation. And of course, you need allocated resources efficiently and effectively dedicated for public health. Then only you can have a good surveillance system. So these are the case definitions, possible, probable, and confirmed. And this is an example for viral hepatitis. And this is the book that we use for surveillance case definitions. And it's available in our Epid Unit website as well. So when a patient comes to a hospital with a suspected disease, so there are a set of formats and registered to be filled by the hospital people, initiated by the doctor who is treating, and then it goes to the infection control nursing officer. In short, we say ICNOs. Then ICNOs is the person who is responsible for fill the address and send it to the relevant MOH office by post. So these are the formats the initial format that we used, notification of communicable disease. So once this particular notification comes to the MOH office of the patient's residence, it goes to the area public health inspector, and it goes to, again, there are some set of formularities to do, inward register and this and that. Then all the cases, public health inspector has to visit the household and do an investigation. So during this home visit, so these are the things that we expect from this public health inspector: confirm or refute the diagnosis. So I told you this notification comes on suspicion. They don't have to wait till the final conclusion. So this PHI's duty is to confirm or refute, because by the time the PHI visits the household, patient may come back home. So if not, he should go again to find out whether to confirm or refute it. So ensure the patient is taking proper treatment and encourage continued treatment. Assess the health and contact person and guide them for proper treatment. This is the most important point as far as I'm concerned, because there may be patients in the early stages, prodromal phase of a particular same disease. So the PHI, with his clinical knowledge, he can identify the people with early symptoms and they can send them to hospital. Then observe the environment to locate the potential source of infection. So again important, unless you control the source of infection, the disease will go forever. So take control measures to prevent further spread to the community, and take measures ensure prevention of future outbreaks as well, and health education, and importantly report back to the MOH office. So this is a pictorial form of the same thing which I described. It comes from the hospital, medical officer of health goes to the public health inspector, comes back to the MOH office with confirm or refute case. Then electronically it sends to regional epidemiologist and the central epid unit. So in addition to this routine investigation, these are the special investigations that we have. So more data are required for prevention and control. That is why we have special surveillance. So we have 16 diseases under surveillance. So these are the diseases. So these are the formats. So for the Sentinel, it's a special type of surveillance system that we have. It improves the timeliness, improves the accuracy of data, usefulness, improves the usefulness, and many more things. So these are the diseases. For this COVID-19, we have 15 hospitals identified as Sentinel surveillance sites. So the outbreak investigation, again, the same important facts. So I'll skip these slides. So this is the why we need outbreak investigation. So without outbreak surveillance system, this is the proportion that you can save from the disease. So, but you have a ideal good sequence of disease surveillance, so you can save large number of people. So this is a good example which we had this occurrence in last year. Then initially it is notified 6 cases. Then with active surveillance, we were able to manage 33 cases. After exactly 1 month of incubation period, we got 10 cases. After that, completely we were able to subside this. Sample surveys, of course, I'll skip. So these are the dissemination methods. So weekly, we have a weekly publication. And these days, because of Corona, we have daily publication of updates. So these are the situation in the country every day by 10 o'clock. So these are the key achievements that we have gained over a period of time. You can see a nice downward trend of all the food and waterborne diseases. This is how we controlled JE in Sri Lanka. Again, with the surveillance, we identified and controlled the JE. So these are the list of diseases that we have eliminated and to be eliminated in 2020. Actually, measles is the last to eliminate in last year, September. And so this year, we are hoping to eliminate these 3 diseases. This is how we eliminated malaria. Actually, the last case of malaria was found in 2012, and elimination certificate was given in 2016. Since the time limitation, I'm not going to detail these things. So these are the current activities: reducing vulnerability, chemoprophylaxis, and early detection and treatment, and parasitic surveillance, and reducing receptivity, entomological, and vector control activities. So now that is for communicable disease. Similar to that, so we have key achievements in MCH services. You can see how we control maternal mortality. Actually, we have data from 1930, if you can see on the leftmost corner. So now our maternal mortality is 30 per 100,000 live births. So final 2 slides. So if you do a health expenditure comparison as well, just for the completeness, so you can see where we stand. Sri Lanka stands, we have a 4,000 odd per capita income in 2017, whereas the developed countries, you can see how big that they are per capita. So health expenditure proportion We are spending only 3.5, whereas the other countries, is approximately 10% of their total budget is going for health. So I would say out of this 3.5, public health gets only 10%. Let's look at the performance. So this is the performance. So maternal mortality in 2015 is 30, Australia is 6, UK 9, and Japan 5, with minimum amount of money that we are spending. Life expectancy, you can see how much we close to them. And for communicable diseases, I took only enteric fever. This is the incidence of enteric fever. It's 1.6 in 2016, whereas these are the incidences of the other countries. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I wish you all the best.